Hello, and just want to welcome you to this last couple of videos. These are going to be really short, but what I'm doing here, I just want to share with you some things that are going to be on the final. So, if you can find on Red Zone the slides for ethical pluralism and virtue ethics, chapter 15, chapter 16, and chapter 17. Those are the three chapters I'm going to fly through, okay? This is about ethical pluralism. I just want to say on a personal note, sorry I didn't get more videos for you. This semester did not work out like I had hoped, or I'm sure you had hoped. Your final exam will be posted, and it will be due on Wednesday night or Thursday night. I kind of thinking I have to have it on Wednesday though. At any rate, if you can get your PowerPoint open to chapter 15 on ethical pluralism, I'm going to just fly through a couple things on this chapter. What I want to do first of all is remind us what the purpose of life is, what ethics is all about. The purpose of life, in an ethical sense, is to live well. That's on slide 3. Slide 4 is what are ethics about? It's about human behavior, right? Whether it's right or wrong, good or evil. And we have been looking at different normative theories about this particular thing. And what is a moral proposition? The question is, for you, I'm sure, is what is a moral proposition? The answer is, whenever you say something is right or wrong, that's what you're proposing to be correct or not correct, or proposition for evil or good. It's a statement of belief, belief of what is right or wrong about something, good or bad, evil or virtuous about a certain action. And that you'll see in slide 5. Ethical monism is one supreme rule for everything. And a lot of people, I think, feel like that they have to have one normative theory to live by. And that is called ethical monism. And what this is leading into is ethical pluralism. So let me just say this, and I know that you're probably not highlighting or focusing on what pluralistic religious values are about, or what pluralism means in the religious sense. But pluralism, from a religious perspective, is saying, hey, I can be a Jew, I can be a Hindu, and I can be a Christian all at the same time. No, you can't. You can't be a multiple religious affiliation. You can't be a follower of multiple religious groups. I mean, I guess you can be a follower, but you can't hold strongly to these groups. Gandhi said he was a good Christian, a good Hindu, and a good Jew. I don't believe what Gandhi said, but for what it's worth, department is that in the religious arena, a religious pluralism is not good. It's looked upon very badly, because you can't be a Buddhist, and a Hindu at the same time. You can't be a Buddhist or a Muslim. They don't work. It just doesn't. And that comes down from the philosophical idea of monism. You need to follow one rule. And so religious pluralism is trying to say, oh, I can believe in God, and I can believe in Buddha, and I can believe in multiple gods, and that's pluralistic. Just give you that idea. But when it comes to ethics, ethical pluralism is a little bit different. because it is looking at different normative theories. Say, I want to, you'll hold a contract theory for some things, but to be honest, when you're making daily decisions, I know sometimes either you're going to be a deontologist because you feel like that's the rule to abide by, or you're going to look at the consequences and decide that, hey, I'm going to make my decision on the consequences of this, of the outcome of the possible outcome of this decision. So that is where ethical pluralism comes into being. When we're applying different kinds of normative theories in our life in a given day or maybe in a given moment. But so ethical pluralism then is applying several rules and to one's decision-making process about morality. But there's some challenges that are brought about in the book, and I think it's important for us to highlight. One, I think most of us believe that torture is wrong. However, if you can torture somebody and save 800 people, wouldn't it be good to torture? I mean, you're only hurting one person, right? Maybe we should be allowed to torture if this is kind of the consequentialist's idea, correct? But most of us think torture is bad. But if it's going to save a whole community, we kind of did this in class, maybe. If you remember, you got to kill somebody to make up for that murder rapist guy. Someone in this group of 1,000, because someone in that group did it, even though they don't have any proof. They're just holding them hostage until you give us the person, or I'm going to kill you all. That kind of thing. The question is, and it's found on page 223, 222, and following, is torture always immoral? Most of us would agree that, torture is not good. There's no point in ever torturing. But hey, what if the CIA or someone could torture somebody and save a whole nation? Well, someone might think, okay, there may be some reason to do that. If you're going to be able to prevent a catastrophe, maybe. But there's some doctrines that are coming into play, and one of them is called the doctrine of double effect. So I'm going to use some things that are in the book and some that are not. And again, we're just going to fly through these two ethical ideas real quick. The doctrine of double effect starts on page 225, and make sure you understand what this rule is about. But it is possibly doing one thing for an effect, but having another effect along with it. Basically, it's called collateral damage. Possibly. It could be. The idea of saving people, you want to save 5 people, right? So in order to do this, you take this one unfortunate soul that's homeless, and you put him to death, and to save the other 5, because the other 5 need a kidney, a heart, lungs. They need a full blood transfusion or something, all these different things. It just happens, this one guy dies. That's the effect is helping 5. You kill one, but hey, which is better, right? This is the way some people are looking at life, and I kind of think actually this whole pandemic is a way a lot of people are looking at this. And there's a doctrine of double effect going on. We're saving people's life, but hey, ruin the economy while doing that. That could be, it could be okay. Obviously, it's okay with some people. Some of us are, I've not been affected. I don't know anyone that's been affected. And a whole 22 cases in the county of Labette. And there's like 20 counties in Kansas that haven't had one case of this COVID-19 pandemic that everyone's worried about. Um, I wore my mask when I go out. I wash my hands. But here's the doctrine of double effect applied in this. Okay, we want to save people alive, but hey, mess up the economy. Take people's jobs away. Make people not go to school or maybe not learn as much. I think we have all been cut short with our classes because of this. And I have a full-time job. I just, I could go in and go through the PowerPoints. But this has been a real challenge for all of us. That's kind of what the doctrine of double effect is. And then there's a doctrine of doing and acting, or doing and allowing, rather. It's on page 233. I highlight these because I'm going to ask what they are on the final. Okay, so you'll need to know those. So look on those to look, and the doctrine of doing and allowing. I mean, doing one thing is probably worse than allowing it to be done. It's worse. See, a lot of people. Could you imagine being the hangman in the Old West? It's one thing to allow people to be hung, but it's quite the different thing. And I'm sure you could think of it this way: to actually be the guy, to pull the lever to cause the guy to be hung and die. What's the difference? I mean, you're allowing it, you're a public citizen. It's okay. You feel like that person deserves to be hung. And then you're going to say, no, I'm not going to pull the lever. Or, in modern day situation, you're going to sit in an electric chair, or you're the one that's going to pull the switch and cause that person to be electrified to death. Are you willing to do that? Which is worse, to be doing the lever thing or just allowing it to be done? Most people would say pulling the switch is worse. Or lethal injection. Hey, I'm okay with them doing that. I don't personally want to lethal inject. Do you? That's the doctrine of doing and allowing. Read through that, make sure you have an idea. And here's where it comes down to ethical pluralism. Is chapter 16. It's called the prima facie duties. And there's a guy by the name of W.D. Ross. I'm going to pick up the camera and show my PowerPoint. You'll see this. I've said that on all of our cases, we need to know all of our normative theories. We need to associate a person with them. Well, this is the guy, W.D. Ross, that we're going to associate with the pluralism, okay? Because he has the prima facie duties. Prima facie is a Latin term, and it is saying it's obvious. It's in your face. It's prime. It's right there. And there are seven prima facie duties. You'll need to know these for your final. One is that of fidelity. You need to stick with your word. Reparations. And okay, so if you want to follow along with me on page 240 in your textbook and on the PowerPoint of chapter 16, slide number 6 is where this is found. And then it describes them. Okay. You'll need to know these 7 for the final. Fidelity, reparations. That means you need to repair your relationships that you have with people. You need to keep your word. You need to repair relationships. In other words, maybe forgive. You need to let go of certain, don't hold a grudge, but repair relationships. You need to be have gratitude, be thankful. You need to be just, be equitable in your decision-making processes for people. You need to show some beneficence, okay? You need to be kind toward people, maybe be generous, and also, show a little mercy. To be kind toward others, show some beneficence. Self-improvement. You need to improve yourself. Olympians do this, basketball players do this, all right? Students do this. If you're really a student, you're going to want to learn more, and that's about self-improvement. If you want to be a good husband or a wife, you want to see how to do that, and part of that is doing the other things: the reparations, fidelity, being kind, being grateful. So that's part of self-improvement and non-maleficence. Don't be mean. That's pretty obvious. You don't hurt people just to hurt people. You're not out to make people look bad, humiliate others. That's just not right. And so those are kind of obvious, right? And this is called prima facie. So those are the 7 things that W.D. Ross that brought to us the idea of these prima facie duties. And there's some advantage of this because of moral regret, addressing the ideas that there are some things that when you have a regret that something was lost, that maybe you did something wrong, and okay, yeah, we need to make it right. So, hey, we need reparations. And he talks about this in the book. Okay. Some self-evident, the idea of certain things being absolutely clear and self-evident. I'm just looking through my PowerPoint here as we look at this. And so again, just to remind you, this is part of the pluralism. And some people would want to say, no, you need to stick to one rule to fit all people, all times, for all things. And I think that's a hard one to do. It's an absolute. We're going to be absolute on this. That's monism. Versus pluralism is like, okay, we need to give a little leeway. Maybe we're going to work on prima facie normative theory on this one hand. So this normative theory is not prima facie technically, it's pluralism, okay? So this is the normative theory for this discussion is pluralism, but prima facie duties is kind of the foundation of that and working with that. And pluralism is just applying several different normative theories to your decision-making process. All right. So I'm just looking at different things here that may be important for this. And so some of the things for the biggest hurdle for prima facie duties, and I'm on slide 24 now of chapter 16. How can we know what to do in particular situations? There's no ranking. What's more important, reparations or fidelity, or non-malevolence or beneficence? The challenge of any of these when they have several things involved, and especially in prima facie duties, there are 7 of them. Which one is number 1? Where do we go? What do we do? How do we say this? Don't know. That's the hurdle that they have in this. I think it's a good rule, but it leads really to virtue ethics, which is the next one I want to point out here. virtue ethics really came from Aristotle. So that's who we're looking at in virtue ethics. And we're trying to figure out, what is the virtue? And the same problem exists for virtue ethics that we have in prima facie duties as to what virtue is more important than other virtues. Which is the number one virtue? So if you turn to chapter 17, virtue ethics, you'll have in the book, it talks about being virtuous. The question is, who's virtuous? Who's the most virtuous? And that was one of the questions I was going to ask you. Who's the most virtuous person you know? Grandma, mom, dad, a friend? Think about that. What virtues are important? And in this slide presentation I have on number 18 is bravery, is generosity, having wisdom, telling the truth, being steadfast, if you even know what that means. Steadfast is kind of like a runner who runs a marathon, just continues to continue to do what it needs to be done to get there to the end. Steadfast all the way to that final mile. But courage, justice, honor, what being fair, loyal, honesty, self-reliant, hardworking, determination. That's kind of a part of what steadfastness is. Respectability, boldness, and again, bravery. Which one of these are most important? These are different kind of virtues. Well, there is no really standard way to say which one's most important. And who is virtuous? Well, I'm going to illustrate it a little bit like what the book says. For those of you that are familiar with pro sports, there's someone that's an MVP, not a rookie one, but let's use baseball. There's the Golden Glove Award. Well, the Golden Glove goes to not the newbie. It goes to someone that's proven themselves over the years that, hey, they can really catch, they can throw the ball in the right place at the right time. They really know what they're doing in this baseball arena, and the Golden Glove is awarded to them. Maybe based on that year, but really they have a lot of years that they're basing these things on. Year after year after year, they've done some good things, and they've proven themselves over time. And that's really where virtue ethics comes in. It's the idea of who proves themselves over time, and what the book uses on page 257 is the moral exemplar. So the exemplar. So someone that exhibits over time their loyalty or their courage, or they're dealing justly. They're not timid, they're not lazy. But over a period of a long time, they have done the right thing. And so there's some complexity in this, and some real challenge of virtue ethics. But it's saying, let's hold these virtues in high esteem and shoot for them. But the question is, what virtue is most important? And Aristotle has some challenges and some suggestions, of course, on how to do this. So I'm going to skip down in my slide presentation to slide 42. I said we're going to fly through this. But what Aristotle has is three parts, okay? There are three parts to virtue. There's that part that doesn't quite fit, and the part that way overdoes it. It's way overly done. The person that doesn't quite make the virtue, but is not overly virtuous. And let me explain. Let's use bravery. It's not on this slide, but bravery is what we want. Now, the brave guy isn't in the back of the lines kind of holding their hiding, right? Now, that person sounds like a coward. That's not bravery. He's deficient in bravery. But he's also not the guy that just flies out there, oh, I'm going to fight everybody and I'm going to do everything right and I'm going to just jump out there and show you all how to do it and and jump out there and then get his head whacked off at the very first because he's stupid. He's not just, he might sound brave, but he's exceedingly retarded. I mean, maybe not the right word. He's way overly ambitious and without lack of maybe training or understanding. A brave person has training. A brave person knows that they probably ought to hold a shield as well as a sword. You see a sword back there. I'm not a sword fighter, but that was given as a gift. It's a whole different story. But a brave person will have a shield and a sword, and he'll have a lot of practice, and he'll have some understanding. Have some understanding about what it takes to fight in different situations. So this doesn't come overnight. This doesn't come in one lesson of sword fighting. And it doesn't come with just a year of lessons. It takes lots of practice, kind of like golf or other things that happen. It takes lots of practice and a lot of work in that. So what he does on this slide 42, what I've done for you is shown you what is deficient in the program, what you're really shooting for. Say you're shooting for bravery. You have to have some education. You can't overdo it. You can't extend yourself and just go out there and be stupid. And I don't know what that would be called except for dumb. But brave person will have the right understanding and then will also be fit and ready and do it smartly. That's bravery. On the other hand, that's bravery, at least in applying to military sense in the old-time Roman fighting idea of bravery. But let's use what's on the slide here. Friendliness. We want someone that's friendly. But you don't want someone that's overly friendly. Maybe they're just kind of over the top. They're excessively friendly. They're a flatterer. Or if they're not so friendly, you might think they're stuck up, or there's a word here, obsequiousness. Probably not even pronouncing it right. Need to use different word. But the person that's not very friendly is kind of withdrawn. But you want a friendly person, kind of fit in the middle. That's what Aristotle says is the golden mean. There's the deficient part that's not quite so much, and then there's the overdone part that's way excitable, and it's like, okay, you're weird, and I don't want to be a part of that. Friendly is just right down the middle. Harmony is this is one of the words. Harmony, and you might be using this in all sorts of ways. My first thought is going to music. But you want good harmony. There's some where it's bland, there's no harmony at all. And then there's some that's over the top and there's too much. You want that golden mean, that right in the middle. For like peace. We like to have a peaceful life. With the deficiency of peace is that you might think of this as opposite, but to be deficient of peace, you have way too much going on. It's just strife. It's chaotic even. But then peace comes kind of in the center. You have things going on, but it's not overly done. And then it's not deficient, or it's not so underly done that you're bored. Or excessive peace is just totally nothing going on. It's humdrum. It's not even fun. But peace is in the middle, and you have a good number of things going on, and you're riding the middle well. That's kind of like for order as well as chaos and all this stuff going on. And then if you have too much order, though, And it's on the slide, there's regimentation. You're so regimented and orderly, it's like, ugh, that's overly done. You need to lighten up a little bit, right? Freedom. We need some freedom. Excessive amount of freedom. You have anarchy. You have people doing willy-nilly, doing anything they want. Under the idea of the freedom that we're shooting for, maybe you have slavery, or maybe you have too many rules you're caught up in. Maybe that's the regimentation we even talked about. But that's the idea. This golden mean is Aristotelian mean. And this is his kind of guidelines on how to be virtuous. You don't want to be overly done, and you want to be underly done. You want it cooked just right. Okay. The nature of virtue it is a lot about perception and trying to figure out what it is. And he has the word, and it's a Greek word, as you might well know. Now, the Aristotle what was a Greek, but it's eudaimonia. It's having a good soul. And with that comes a lot of education, a lot of understanding of where to be. Some wisdom will come in that. But there's some challenges for virtue ethics. But this is what I want to do. For the rest of this, I'm not going to give you a whole lot. There's some challenges always when there's contradiction, and you'll see this in pluralism as well. There's an argument against contradiction on page 230. That is in the pluralistic discussion. But the contradictions also occur in virtue ethics, and it's challenging, but it's something that we have to understand and look at. The contradiction is this: one is to be virtuous, and may not seem as a contradiction to you at first, but it is. Are we always going to be this? Is the person the moral exemplar that we're looking for? Will they always be virtuous in every decision that they make? Probably not, because none of us are perfect. Benjamin Franklin tried this, and he listed 13 virtues that he looked at, and he couldn't quite make it all work. And he thought he was going to set out to show how to live a perfect life. Maybe the good life, eudaimonia. I'm not sure he'd heard of that word, but who knows. But he set out with these 13 virtues and really focused on one for a week or two, and then focused on another. And finally, he just kind of put his personal notes aside and